Taman Park stood in the center of the training arena, breathing hard. His body ached from a dozen different places where his opponent had struck him. Around the circular platform, other cadets watched with expressions ranging from pity to barely concealed amusement. This was his third failed combat assessment, and everyone knew what that meant. One more failure and he would be expelled from the Galactic Academy. His opponent, a tall reptilian creature from the Draconite species, didn't even look tired. Commander Velthar clicked his claws together in what Taman had learned was their species' version of a disappointed sigh. The commander's yellow eyes fixed on him with cold judgment. "Cadet Park, you are dismissed," Commander Velthar said. His voice carried across the arena, making sure everyone heard. "I question whether humans truly belong among warrior species. Perhaps your kind is better suited for academic pursuits." The words stung worse than any of the hits Taman had taken. He bowed slightly, trying to maintain some dignity, and walked toward the exit. His legs felt like lead. Around him, conversation started up immediately. He caught fragments of whispered comments. "Third failure in a row. I heard Earth only sent 12 humans this cycle. Half of them have already washed out. Why did they even accept him? His test scores were good, but he can't fight." Taman kept his eyes forward and pushed through the door into the corridor. The Galactic Academy was an enormous station orbiting Varen Prime, home to cadets from 47 different species. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 2 generations ago, and spots at the Academy were precious. Every human who failed here made it harder for the next generation. He made his way to the locker area, wanting nothing more than to change and disappear into his quarters. The shower stalls were blessedly empty. He let the hot water run over his bruised shoulders and tried not to think about the message he would have to send home to his parents in Seoul. When he emerged, still damp and pulling on his uniform, he found someone waiting for him. Yejin Choi leaned against the lockers with her arms crossed. She was a 4th-year cadet, one of the most respected human fighters in the academy. Taman had seen her win matches against species that were naturally stronger and faster than humans. She had never spoken to him before. "Cadet Park," she said. Her voice was cool and controlled. "Senior Cadet Choi," Taman replied, straightening despite his exhaustion. "You always showed respect to senior students." Hyejin pushed off from the lockers and walked toward him. In her hands she carried something wrapped in old cloth. "I've been watching your assessments." "All 3 of them?" Taman felt his face grow hot. "I'm working on improving." "Are you?" She unwrapped the cloth, revealing an old sword. The blade was pitted with rust, the metal dull and orange-brown in the fluorescent lights. The handle was wrapped in leather that had rotted in places, showing the metal underneath. It looked like something from a museum, completely out of place in a facility full of plasma rifles and energy blades. "This belonged to my grandmother," Hyejin said. "She gave it to me when I was accepted to the academy 4 years ago. It's been in our family for generations, supposedly, some old relic from Korea's past." She held it out toward Taman, but not as an offering, more like she was showing him a curiosity. "It's very old," Taman said, unsure what she wanted from him. "It's useless," Yejin corrected. "What good is an ancient metal sword in space? We fight with weapons that can cut through starship hulls. This thing probably couldn't cut through paper anymore." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "My grandmother filled my head with stories about how special it was. Family honor and ancient power and all that traditional nonsense. But it's just a rusty piece of junk." Other cadets had started to filter into the locker area. Taman saw Minseo Lee, his roommate, among them. Minseo was a 2nd-year human who never let Taman forget that he was doing much better in all their classes. "I thought you might like it," Hyejin continued, her voice carrying across the room now. "Since you seem to prefer outdated methods, maybe you can hang it on your wall. It would suit you." "Obsolete and worthless." She tossed the sword toward him. Taman caught it reflexively, nearly fumbling it before getting a good grip. The metal felt cold in his hands, heavier than he expected. Around the room, several cadets laughed. Hyejin turned and walked away without another word. The other students dispersed, some still chuckling. Minseo shook his head as he passed. That's harsh, even for her. Taman stood there holding the rusty sword, feeling the weight of it in more ways than one. It was just another reminder of his failures. He wrapped it back in the cloth and carried it to his quarters. The room he shared with Minseo was small but functional. 2 bunks, 2 desks, a shared bathroom. Minseo was out, probably at the recreation center. Taman was grateful for the privacy. He sat on his bunk and unwrapped the sword again. In the dim light of their quarters, it looked even worse. The rust had eaten through the metal in several places. The edge was dull and chipped. He ran his finger carefully along the flat of the blade, feeling the rough texture of corrosion. Then something impossible happened. The moment his skin touched the metal, light erupted from the blade. Golden light, bright and warm, flooded the entire room. Taman nearly dropped the sword in shock. The light seemed to come from within the metal itself, pushing out through the rust like sunlight through clouds. As he watched, unable to look away, symbols began to appear along the length of the blade. They glowed with the same golden radiance, flowing script that looked somehow familiar but alien at the same time. The rust started to flake away, falling like metallic snow. Underneath, the steel was perfect and bright, unmarked by age or decay. The sword hummed in his hands. Not a sound he could hear with his ears, but something he felt in his bones. It was like the weapon was alive, aware of him, responding to something inside him that he didn't understand. The leather wrapping on the handle renewed itself before his eyes. The rot reversed, the material becoming supple and dark, fitting perfectly to his grip. The blade sang with power, and Taman felt energy flowing up his arms, filling him with a strength he had never known. Then the door opened. Minseo walked in, stopping dead when he saw the light. What in the galaxy? The moment Taman's attention broke, the light vanished. The sword went dark. When Taman looked down, the rust had returned. The blade looked exactly as it had when Heejin gave it to him. Old and useless, what was that? Minseo demanded. I saw light from the hallway. I don't know, Taman said honestly. His heart was pounding. The sword, it glowed. Let me see it. Taman handed it over reluctantly. Minseo gripped the handle, turned it over, examined it from every angle. Nothing happened. It remained a rusty, ancient blade. No light, no symbols, no transformation. You're seeing things, Minseo said, tossing it back onto Taman's bunk. Probably hit your head too many times in that assessment today. Get some sleep. After Minseo went to bed, Taman sat up for hours, holding the sword, watching it glow only for him. The symbols along the blade seemed to tell a story he couldn't read. The power that flowed through it felt vast and ancient, like touching something that had waited thousands of years to wake up. He had no idea what it meant, but for the first time since arriving at the academy, Taman felt something other than inadequacy. He felt chosen. 2 weeks had passed since Heejin gave Taman the sword. 2 weeks of secrets and late-night training sessions in empty practice rooms. Taman discovered that the Academy's training facilities stayed open all night for species with different sleep cycles. That meant he could practice alone without anyone seeing what the sword could do. The blade taught him things. That was the only way he could explain it. When it glowed in his hands, his body seemed to know movements he had never learned. His strikes became faster, more precise. The sword guided his arms, his feet, his whole body through forms that felt both ancient and natural. It was like remembering something he had never forgotten. His regular training scores began to improve. Not dramatically, but enough that instructors noticed. Commander Velthar had stopped making cutting remarks about human weakness. Warlord Kresh, a massive Urgith instructor built like a walking tank, had even nodded at him once after a drill. For a species that rarely acknowledged anyone smaller than themselves, that was significant. But Taman kept the glowing sword hidden. He practiced with standard academy weapons during official sessions, saving the real blade for his midnight training. He told himself he needed to understand what it was before revealing it. The truth was he was afraid. Afraid of what it meant, afraid people would take it away. Afraid he would lose the one thing that made him feel capable. On the 15th night, he wasn't alone. Taman was in Training Room 7, deep in the station's lower levels where few students ventured. The room was small, designed for individual practice. He had the sword out, and it blazed with golden light as he moved through a complex series of strikes and blocks. The symbols along the blade flowed like liquid fire. He was so focused that he didn't hear the door open. By the stars. Taman spun around, nearly dropping the sword. A young woman stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock. He recognized her. Salmon Bay, a first-year cadet like him. She specialized in xenoarchaeology and ancient cultures, not combat training. He had seen her in the library more often than the training halls. Salmon, he said, and the sword's light dimmed immediately. By the time she took 2 steps into the room, it looked rusty and old again. What was that? She moved closer, staring at the blade in his hands. That light, those symbols. Taemin, what is that sword? He could have lied, should have lied. But something about the genuine curiosity in her face, the excitement rather than fear, made him stop. I don't know, he admitted. It only glows when I touch it. When anyone else holds it, nothing happens. The symbols, Soman said, almost breathless. Can you make it glow again, please? Taemin hesitated, then gripped the handle properly. The golden light returned, washing over both of them. Soman gasped and moved even closer, her face inches from the blade as she studied the flowing script. This is incredible, she whispered. These symbols, they're Hanja, ancient Korean characters, but mixed with something else. Something I've never seen before. She looked up at him, her eyes bright with realization. Where did you get this? Taemin explained about Hyejin, about the gift that was meant to mock him. As he spoke, Soman's expression grew more serious. We need to show this to Dr. Kang, she said firmly. The historian? He's not just a historian. He's one of the galaxy's leading experts on ancient human culture and its connections to other species. If anyone can tell us what this is, it's him. Dr. Junho Kang's office was crammed with artifacts, books, and data tablets. The walls were covered in images of archaeological sites from dozens of worlds. The professor himself was a thin man with graying hair and eyes that seemed permanently tired. When Soman messaged him about an urgent discovery, he agreed to meet them immediately, despite the late hour. When Taemin activated the sword in his office, Dr. Kang went completely pale. He stood up so fast his chair fell over backward. For a long moment he just stared, his mouth opening and closing without sound. This is impossible, he finally managed. His hands were shaking as he reached toward the blade, stopping just short of touching it. The blade of the first warrior. I thought it was a legend. You know what this is? Taemin asked. Dr. Kang moved around his desk, pulled out a data tablet, and started typing frantically. 3,000 years ago, long before humans developed space travel, Earth was visited by a species we call the progenitors. We have very little evidence of them, just fragments of ruins and scattered references in ancient texts from multiple human cultures. He turned the tablet around, showing them an image. It was a rubbing from an old stone tablet, showing figures that were humanoid but not quite human, surrounded by primitive humans who seemed to be bowing or reaching toward them. The progenitors seeded the galaxy with intelligent species, Dr. Kang continued, speaking rapidly now. They would find worlds with potential, guide them, test them. According to the few records we've found, they visited Earth during what we call ancient times. They made contact with several human civilizations including Korea, China, Egypt, and others. What did they want? Soman asked. They were looking for warriors, not just fighters, but species with the potential for true courage, sacrifice, and growth. They left behind gifts for humanity. 12 weapons scattered across different cultures, weapons that would remain dormant until humanity reached the stars and someone worthy touched them. Dr. Kang pointed at the sword in Taemin's hands. That is one of those weapons. A progenitor blade given to an ancient Korean warrior, passed down through generations waiting for the right moment to awaken. Taemin felt dizzy. But why me? I'm the worst fighter in my class. I failed 3 assessments. Perhaps that's exactly why, Dr. Kang said softly. The progenitors didn't value strength alone. According to the fragments of their philosophy we've recovered, they believed true warriors were defined by their hearts, their determination, and their will to protect others. Physical strength could be taught, character could not. Before Taemin could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. Dr. Kang's communication panel lit up with an urgent message. Containment breach in the training sector, a voice announced over the station-wide system. All personnel evacuate residential areas. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. What's been released? Soman asked, her face pale. Dr. Kang pulled up a security feed on his screen. They all stared in horror at what they saw. A Vexnar beast, 12 feet tall with crystalline armor covering its body, was tearing through a corridor. These creatures were used to test advanced 4th-year students, but only under strictly controlled conditions with multiple safeguards. This one was running free, and it was heading directly toward the first-year dormitories. On the screen, they could see Hyejin leading a response team. She moved with deadly grace, her plasma blade flashing as she tried to drive the creature back. But the Vexnar was too strong, too enraged. As they watched, it swatted her aside like an insect. She hit a wall and crumpled, not moving. Other students were trying to evacuate, but they were trapped. The beast stood between them and the emergency exits. Taman was already moving toward the door, the glowing sword in his hand. Taman, wait, Dr. Kang called after him. You're not ready for this. But Taman was running, his feet pounding against the metal floors of the station. The sword blazed brighter than ever, the golden light streaming behind him like a comet's tail. He didn't know if he was ready. He didn't know if he could win, but he knew that people needed help, and he had a weapon that responded only to him. Whatever the progenitors had seen in humanity, whatever quality they had deemed worthy, Taman had to trust that it was enough. Behind him, Soman and Dr. Kang ran to keep up, but he was faster than he had ever been. The sword seemed to pull him forward, eager, ready for what came next. In the corridors ahead, screams echoed through the metal walls. The Vexnar roared, a sound that made the station's structure vibrate. Taman burst through a doorway and into chaos. The beast turned toward him. Its crystalline eyes reflected the golden light of his sword, and for just a moment, something that might have been fear crossed its alien features. Then it charged, and Taman raised the blade to meet it, knowing that everything was about to change. The corridor was a nightmare of destruction. Shattered panels hung from the walls, sparking with exposed wiring. Emergency lights cast everything in harsh red shadows. The Vexnar beast dominated the space, its crystalline body reflecting the alarm lights like a deadly prism. Behind it, Taman could see injured students trying to crawl to safety. Hijin lay motionless against a wall, her leg bent at an unnatural angle. The creature was larger than Taman had realized from the security feed. Its shoulders nearly touched the ceiling. Each of its 4 arms ended in claws that looked like they could cut through steel. Its crystalline armor plates shifted and moved as it breathed, creating an unsettling clicking sound. When it saw Taman, it tilted its head, studying him with intelligence that was somehow worse than mindless rage. Then it charged. Taman barely got the sword up in time. The blade met the creature's claws with a sound like thunder. Golden light exploded from the impact point, and the Vexnar actually stumbled backward, surprise visible in its alien features. Around them, everyone who could still move stopped and stared. That's a progenitor weapon, someone breathed. Taman recognized Commander Velthar's voice, full of shock. The legends were true, but Taman didn't have time to think about legends or impossibilities. The Vexnar recovered quickly and came at him again. This time it was more cautious, circling him, looking for an opening. Taman moved with it, keeping the sword between them. The blade felt alive in his hands, almost vibrating with eagerness. Knowledge flowed into his mind, techniques he had never learned but somehow knew. His body moved before his conscious mind could catch up, blocking, dodging, striking. He was faster than he should be, stronger than he had any right to be. But the Vexnar was still bigger, still more powerful. One of its strikes got through his guard and caught him across the ribs. Taman felt something crack as he flew backward, hitting the wall hard enough to see stars. The sword clattered from his grip. The golden light vanished instantly. The blade looked rusty and old again, lying on the floor between him and the beast. The Vexnar saw its chance and rushed forward, moving with terrifying speed. Taman's hand shot out, fingers closing around the handle. Light blazed back to life, even brighter than before. He rolled aside as massive claws struck where his head had been, gouging deep furrows in the metal wall. Around them, more people were arriving. Security personnel with plasma rifles took up positions, but they couldn't fire without risk of hitting students still trapped behind the creature. Warlord Kresh appeared, his massive Urgath body armored in combat gear. Even he paused when he saw the glowing sword. "Clear the area," Kresh bellowed. "Get the injured out, move." Several cadets rushed forward to drag wounded students to safety. Taman saw 2 of them reach Hyejin, carefully lifting her between them. She was conscious now, her eyes wide as she watched him face the creature she had failed to stop. The Vexnar attacked again, all 4 arms moving in complex patterns that should have been impossible to defend against. But the sword guided Taman's movements, showing him where to block, where to dodge, where to strike back. Golden light trailed his movements like ribbons of fire. Each time the blade connected with the creature's crystalline armor, cracks appeared in the supposedly unbreakable surface. But Taman was taking damage too. A claw raked across his shoulder, leaving burning lines of pain. Another blow caught his leg and he felt muscle tear. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, exhaustion making his arms feel like lead. The sword could enhance his abilities, but it couldn't make him superhuman. His body had limits, and he was rapidly approaching them. Behind the Vexnar, he could see the last of the trapped students being pulled to safety. A young cadet, maybe 14 years old, one of the species that matured faster than humans. She looked at him with wide eyes full of fear and hope. That was when Taman understood. This wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. This was about standing between danger and people who couldn't protect themselves. This was about refusing to give up even when giving up was the logical choice. This was what the progenitors had valued in humanity. The sword blazed even brighter, responding to his realization. The golden light intensified until it was almost blinding. Symbols flowed faster along the blade's length and new ones appeared. Glowing script that seemed to write itself in the air around him. The Vexnar sensed the change. It backed up a step, its crystalline body making that unsettling clicking sound as armor plates shifted nervously. Taman attacked. Not with the careful defensive style he had been using, but with aggressive purpose. The sword moved in patterns too fast to follow, each strike precise and devastating. The creature tried to defend itself, but the progenitor blade cut through its armor like it was glass. Pieces of crystalline shell fell away, revealing the vulnerable flesh beneath. The beast roared in pain and rage. It lashed out wildly, and one lucky strike caught Taman across the chest. He felt ribs break, felt the air driven from his lungs. He hit the ground hard and tasted blood. The sword almost slipped from his fingers. Through blurring vision, he saw the Vexnar looming over him. It raised all four arms for a killing strike. Around them, people were shouting, but they seemed far away. Time seemed to slow down. Taman could see every detail of the creature's claws descending toward him. He thought about his parents back on Earth, about the message he would never send them now, about how he had finally found something he was good at, only to die before he could fully understand it. Then he thought about the young cadet's face, about Somin and Dr. Kang, about all the students who had made it to safety because he had bought them. Time. His fingers tightened on the sword's handle. No, he wasn't done yet. The blade exploded with light so bright that everyone had to look away. Taman surged up from the ground, moving faster than physics should allow. The sword met the Vexinar's descending claws and sheared through them like they were made of paper. The beast screamed, a sound of pure agony that made the walls vibrate. Taman didn't stop. He spun, bringing the blade around in a perfect arc that his body knew even though his mind didn't. The sword plunged into the creature's chest, driving through crystalline armor and into the vital organs beneath. Golden light poured from the wound, spreading through the Vexinar's body like fire through dry wood. The creature went rigid. For a moment it stood frozen, impaled on the glowing blade. Then it began to break apart, crystalline plates shattering into fragments that dissolved into light before they hit the ground. Within seconds there was nothing left except a faint shimmer in the air and the memory of its final scream. Taman stood alone in the destroyed corridor, the sword still blazing in his hands. Then his legs gave out and he collapsed. He woke up in the medical wing 3 days later. His body was wrapped in healing bandages that used advanced alien technology to repair damaged tissue. Everything hurt, but in a distant way that suggested they had him on powerful pain medication. Someone was sitting beside his bed. Admiral Torvex, the Academy's commandant. He was a Celestian, tall and elegant, with silver skin that seemed to glow faintly in the medical wing's soft lighting. His species had been spacefaring for thousands of years, and their military tradition was legendary. On the table next to the bed, the sword rested, dormant and rusty once more. "Touch it," Admiral Torvex said. His voice was surprisingly gentle for someone who commanded the galaxy's most prestigious military academy. Taman's hand trembled as he reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the blade, golden light flooded the room. The symbols appeared, flowing script that seemed to dance with joy at his touch. The Admiral nodded slowly as if confirming something he had already suspected. The progenitors left 12 weapons on Earth, scattered among human civilizations. Yours is the first one confirmed to have awakened in over 3,000 years. What does it mean? Taman's voice was hoarse. It means the progenitors were right about humanity. It means your species has something the galaxy desperately needs. And it means, Cadet Park, that the real trial is only beginning. Dr. Kang appeared in the doorway with Somin right behind him. Captain Narration, the head of security, was there too. They all looked at him with expressions mixing pride, concern, and something that might have been fear. The entire galaxy knows about you now, Captain Shin said bluntly. News of a progenitor weapon awakening has spread across every civilized system. Some species see it as hope, others see it as a threat. Earth has become a target, Dr. Kang added quietly. There are factions that want to suppress human advancement. Others want to steal progenitor technology, and some simply want to study you like a laboratory specimen. Admiral Torvex stood. You will continue your training here, but under new protocols. You'll work directly with our best instructors, and you'll learn to use that sword properly, not just instinctively. As they filed out to let him rest, Taman looked at the glowing blade. He had wanted to prove himself, to show he belonged at the academy. He had gotten his wish, but the cost was higher than he could have imagined. The sword pulsed with golden light, warm and reassuring in his hand. Whatever came next, at least he wouldn't face it alone. 6 weeks had passed since Taman killed the Vexnar beast. 6 weeks of intensive training, constant surveillance and growing isolation. The academy felt different now. Some students looked at him with respect, others with jealousy or fear. Many simply avoided him altogether. Taman sat in the advanced combat training hall, watching Warlord Kresh demonstrate a technique to a group of fourth-year students. He had been moved to these elite classes immediately after recovering from his injuries. It should have felt like an honor. Instead, it felt like being put on display. Again, Kresh rumbled, his massive body moving with surprising grace as he showed the proper way to counter an opponent with reach advantage. Park, you're up. Taman stood and moved to the center of the mat. He carried the sword at his side now, always. Admiral Torvex had ordered it. The blade stayed dormant most of the time, looking like a rusty antique, but everyone knew what it could become. As he sparred with Kresh, using the sword's enhanced abilities to match the Urgoth warrior's strength, Taman felt the other students watching. Not learning from the demonstration, just watching him specifically, it made his skin crawl. After class, he headed to the library where he had agreed to meet Soman. She was one of the few people who still treated him normally, though even she seemed more careful around him now. He found her at their usual table, surrounded by data tablets displaying ancient texts. I found something, she said without preamble as he sat down. References to the other progenitor weapons. There are hints in Korean folklore, but also in Japanese, Chinese, and even some European legends. 12 swords, spears, and other weapons all given to humanity in the ancient past. Do we know where they are now? Taman asked. Some of them, maybe. There's a spear currently in a museum in Seoul. It's labeled as a ceremonial artifact from the Three Kingdoms period. According to my research, it fits the description of a progenitor weapon perfectly. Has anyone tried to activate it? Probably not. It would just look like an old spear to anyone who touched it. Just like your sword looked before you held it. A shadow fell across their table. Taman looked up to find Hyejin standing there. She had recovered from her broken leg, but she moved more carefully now, still rebuilding her strength. Her expression was complicated, mixing emotions Taman couldn't quite read. Can we talk? She asked. Privately. They found an empty observation deck that looked out over Veyron Prime. The planet filled half the viewport, its blue and green surface beautiful in the system's golden sunlight. Hyejin stood staring at it for a long moment before speaking. My grandmother told me stories about that sword, she said finally, when I was young before she died. She said it had been in our family for 23 generations. She said it would awaken for someone worthy, someone with a true warrior's heart. Hyejin's voice was bitter. I thought I was worthy. I trained harder than anyone. I won tournaments. I graduated top of my class in combat. But the sword never glowed for me. Not once. Hyejin, why you? She turned to face him and he saw pain in her eyes. You failed 3 assessments. You were about to be expelled. What makes you worthy when I'm not? Taman didn't have an answer. He had asked himself the same question 100 times. I don't know. I wish I did. My grandmother said something else, Hyejin continued. She said the sword wouldn't choose the strongest fighter or the most skilled warrior. It would choose someone who fought for the right reasons. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I thought I had the right reasons. I thought protecting humanity's honor in the galaxy was enough. But maybe I was just fighting for glory. She left before Taman could respond, disappearing through the doorway and leaving him alone with his thoughts. The isolation got worse after that. Minseo requested a room transfer, claiming he couldn't sleep with all the security protocols surrounding Taman. other human cadets began avoiding him in the halls. During meals, he often ate alone while conversations stopped whenever he approached. The only bright spot was an unexpected friendship with Hyejin. She started training with him, learning what the sword could teach. Their relationship was complicated, built on mutual respect and shared uncertainty, but it was something real in a world that felt increasingly artificial. Then Jiho Nam arrived. He was a fourth-year student from Seoul, part of a wealthy family that had connections throughout Earth's government. Taemin had seen him around but never spoken to him. Jiho sought him out one evening in the training halls. "My family guards secrets," Jiho said without introduction. "Old secrets passed down for generations. We know about the progenitor weapons. We've always known." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need allies, and because I believe we're meant to find all 12 weapons and their bearers. The progenitors left them for a reason. They're not just individual tools. They're pieces of something larger." Before Taemin could ask more questions, alarms blared through the station. But these weren't emergency alarms. They were security warnings. Multiple intruders had been detected in the research sector. Taemin ran toward the security center, the sword already glowing in his hand. Captain Shin met him in the corridor, her face grim. "It's the Void Sect," she said. "A radical group that believes humanity's advancement threatens galactic stability. They want to steal or destroy progenitor artifacts." "How many?" "At least 6 that we've identified. They've taken hostages in the xenoarchaeology lab. Dr. Kang. Soman studied there most evenings." Taemin's blood went cold. He reached the lab to find chaos. The door had been blown open. Inside, figures in dark environmental suits held weapons on a group of students and faculty. Taemin recognized Soman among the hostages, her face pale but defiant. Dr. Kang was there too, along with 3 other students. The intruders noticed him immediately. One of them, larger than the others, stepped forward. Through the suit's helmet, Taemin could see inhuman features. Some species he didn't recognize, the weapon bearer, the figure said. Its voice was mechanically translated, flat and cold. "Surrender the progenitor blade and we'll release the hostages." "You know I can't do that," Taemin replied. The sword blazed brighter, responding to his determination. Then they die. What happened next happened fast. The intruder raised a weapon toward Soman. Taemin moved faster than thought, faster than he had ever moved before. The sword seemed to pull him forward, cutting through space itself. He felt something in the blade awaken, some new ability he hadn't known existed. His perception expanded. He could sense the intruders' positions, their intent, the trajectory of their weapons before they fired. Time seemed to slow down, giving him precious seconds to act. The sword guided his movements with perfect precision. He struck the leader's weapon, shattering it into fragments, spun and blocked an attack from behind. The golden light from his blade filled the room, and the progenitor symbols blazed along its length like holy script. The intruders fell back, clearly not prepared for what they faced, but one of them moved toward the hostages with a blade of their own. Taemin couldn't reach them in time. His enhanced perception showed him the attack coming, but not how to stop it. Then someone else did. Captain Shin appeared from another entrance, plasma rifle tracking with practiced precision. Her shot took the intruder in the shoulder, spinning them away from the students. But their return fire caught her in the chest. She went down hard, her armor smoking from the impact. With their leader's weapon destroyed and one of their team injured, the intruders made the smart choice. They activated some kind of emergency transport system and vanished in a shimmer of displaced energy, leaving only their wounded companion behind for security to capture. Taemin rushed to Captain Shin's side. Medics were already on their way, but he could see how badly she was hurt. Her breathing was shallow and blood seeped from beneath her armor. "You did good, kid," she managed to say before the medics took her away. In the medical wing later, Admiral Torvex gathered everyone who had been involved. Captain Shin would survive, but her recovery would take months. The captured intruder had been identified as a member of the Void Sect, confirming their worst fears. "This was just the beginning," the Admiral said. "The Void Sect has cells throughout the galaxy, and they're not the only ones interested in progenitor technology. Earth has become a target." Ambassador Yuna Kwan appeared on the comm screen. She was Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, a sharp woman who had fought for humanity's place among the stars since the first contact. "The Council has issued a demand," she said without preamble. "They want Earth to surrender all progenitor artifacts immediately. If we refuse, Humanity's membership in the galactic community will be revoked. We'll be quarantined, cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Silence filled the room. There is one alternative, Ambassador Quan continued. The Grand Celestial Tournament begins in 6 months. If a human wielding a progenitor weapon can reach the finals and demonstrate humanity's worth, the Council will withdraw their demand. But if the human competitor fails, we must surrender the artifacts and accept Council oversight of all Earth's affairs. Everyone looked at Taman. He felt the weight of billions of people suddenly resting on his shoulders. The tournament has been held for centuries, Warlord Kresh rumbled. 47 species compete. The champions are the galaxy's greatest warriors. Axis Prime was a neutral world, a planet that belonged to no single species but served as common ground for all. The Grand Celestial Arena rose from its surface like a mountain of metal and crystal, large enough to be seen from orbit. Taman stood in the competitor's entrance looking up at the massive structure and felt very small. 6 months of training had transformed him. His body was harder, stronger, faster than he had ever imagined possible. Warlord Kresh had pushed him to his limits and then beyond. Admiral Torvex had taught him strategy and tactics. Hijin had sparred with him until they both collapsed from exhaustion. The sword had revealed more of its abilities, more techniques locked in its ancient memory. But looking at the arena, knowing what waited inside, Taman felt the old doubts creeping back. Stop that, Soman said beside him. She had come as part of Earth's support team, along with Dr. Kang and a few others. I can see you thinking yourself into a corner. You're ready for this. The favorite to win is a warrior named Thane Vor, Taman said. He's from a species that's been genetically enhanced for combat for the last 1,000 years. He's won tournaments on 3 different worlds. He's never been defeated. Then you'll be his first loss, Somin replied firmly. Come on, the opening ceremony starts in an hour. The arena held 50,000 spectators from across the galaxy. Representatives from all 47 member species filled the seats, along with countless others watching through holographic feeds. Taman stood with the other competitors in the center of the arena floor, and the sheer scale of it all took his breath away. There were warriors from species he had only seen in textbooks. Massive creatures built like walking tanks, graceful beings that seemed to float rather than walk. Some wore advanced armor that shimmered with energy fields. Others carried weapons that hummed with barely contained power. And then there was Taman, in simple combat gear, carrying a sword that looked like a rusty antique. Until he gripped it properly, and golden light blazed forth. The entire arena went silent. 50,000 beings from across the galaxy stared at the progenitor weapon, and Taman felt their attention like physical weight. High Judge Koralth presided over the ceremony. He was one of the Ascended Ones, a species so old and advanced that they rarely involved themselves in galactic affairs anymore. His body seemed to be made of living crystal, constantly shifting between different forms. Welcome to the Grand Celestial Tournament. His voice resonated through everyone's mind, rather than their ears. Here the worthy prove themselves through combat. Here, civilizations demonstrate their strength. Let the trials begin. The preliminary rounds were brutal. Taman faced opponents who were faster, stronger, and more experienced than anything he had encountered before. But the sword guided him and his training held firm. He won his first match, then his second, then his third. Each victory was hard-fought, leaving him exhausted and injured, but he advanced. Other human cadets had also entered the tournament. Daehyun Seo was among them, a military officer who used conventional weapons and represented Earth's formal armed forces. He and Taman had barely spoken before, existing in different worlds at the academy. Daehyun had made it clear he thought relying on ancient magic was a crutch. They met in the quarterfinals. The fight was savage. Daehyun was a brilliant tactician and a skilled fighter. He had none of the sword's power, but he had years of dedicated training and an understanding of combat that came from real battlefield experience. He pushed Taman harder than anyone else had, exploiting weaknesses, forcing him to think rather than just react. The sword blazed, but Daehyun had studied how Taman fought. He used the environment, forcing Taman into positions where the blade's length worked against him. At one point, he disarmed Taman entirely, sending the sword skittering across the arena floor. Taman dove for it, but Daehyun was faster. For a moment, the human officer held the progenitor blade. Nothing happened. It remained dark and rusty in his hands. Daehyun's expression flickered with something that might have been disappointment before he tossed it aside. "Fight me without your special weapon," Daehyun challenged. "Show me what you've actually learned." Taemin faced him empty-handed. All the training, all the techniques the sword had taught him, all the muscle memory from months of practice. It was all still there, even without the blade in his hands. They fought hand to hand, and Taemin held his own, using everything he had learned. But he was losing. Slowly, steadily, Daehyun was winning. Taemin's body was giving out, exhaustion and accumulated injuries taking their toll. He went down on one knee, breathing hard. Daehyun stood over him. For a moment, Taemin thought he would deliver a finishing blow. Instead, the officer stepped back. "Get your sword," Daehyun said. "I wanted to see if you were just the weapon or if there was actually a warrior behind it. Now I know. Finish this properly." Taemin retrieved the blade. It blazed with golden light, but this time it felt different, like it was responding to something in him that had been proven in the trial of facing Daehyun without its help. The final exchange was quick and decisive. Taemin won, but barely. As medics helped Daehyun from the arena, the officer paused. "Show them what humans can do," he said. "All of us, not just the ones with magic swords." Taemin made it to the semifinals. His opponent was a Draconite champion, one of Commander Velthar's species. The fight tested everything he had learned. The Draconite was fast, precise, and deadly, but during the match something new happened. The sword began to do things Taemin hadn't known were possible. The blade extended, energy stretching beyond the physical metal to strike at greater range. When the Draconite landed a hit that should have crippled him, golden light flowed through Taemin's body and the wound closed. Not completely, but enough that he could keep fighting. He won, but the victory left him barely able to stand. Medics rushed to help him off the arena floor. In the medical bay, Dr. Kang examined him with instruments that analyzed the sword's energy. "It's healing you," the doctor said, wonder in his voice, drawing on some power source we don't understand. "But it's taking a toll. Taemin, I'm not sure your body can handle another fight like that." "I have to," Taemin replied. "The finals are tomorrow." That night, unable to sleep, he wandered the competitors' quarters. He found himself in an observation room overlooking the arena floor. Empty and dark now. Someone else was already there. Thane Vor stood at the window, his enhanced body radiating controlled power even at rest. He was nearly 8 feet tall, his species' natural strength multiplied by genetic engineering. When he noticed Taemin, he inclined his head slightly. "The human with the progenitor weapon," Thane said. His voice was surprisingly soft. "I've watched your matches. You fight well for someone so young and untrained." "You're going to win tomorrow," Taemin said. It wasn't defeatism, just honesty. Thane Vor was everything a warrior should be. "Perhaps," Thane replied, "but I hope you'll make it interesting. Do you know why I compete in these tournaments? It's not for glory. I've had glory. It's not for prize. I'm wealthy beyond measure. I compete because I seek a true challenge, an opponent who will push me to my limits. I hope you'll be that opponent tomorrow." The finals drew the largest audience in the tournament's history. Billions watched across the galaxy. On Earth, entire cities ground to a halt as everyone gathered to see their champion fight for humanity's place among the stars. Taemin and Thane Vor faced each other across the arena floor. The progenitor sword blazed in Taemin's hands, brighter than it had ever been. Thane carried a blade made from some advanced alloy, humming with contained energy. High Judge Koralth's voice resonated through the arena. "Before this match begins, I would speak of the progenitors. They were my people's teachers long ago. They seeded the galaxy with warrior species, searching for one quality above all others." The crystalline being seemed to look directly at Taemin. They valued strength that came from weakness overcome. They sought warriors who could face impossible odds and still stand. They wanted to find species who would protect others even at cost to themselves. The weapons they left were tests. They awakened only for those who embodied these qualities. The judge paused. On Earth, they found a species that could be weak and still choose courage. That could fail and still rise again. That was the strength they valued most. Begin. The fight was everything Taemin had feared and more. Thane Vor was stronger, faster, more skilled. His enhanced body let him move in ways that shouldn't be possible. His weapon could match the progenitor blade's power. Every advantage Taemin had, Thane had an answer for. They fought across the entire arena floor. Taman used every technique the sword had taught him, every lesson from his training, every ounce of determination he possessed. But Thane was always one step ahead, always slightly better. The enhanced warrior landed a devastating blow that shattered 3 of Taman's ribs. The sword's healing helped, but not enough. Another strike opened a deep cut across Taman's shoulder. He was bleeding, exhausted, running on willpower alone. "You fight well," Thane said, not even breathing hard. "But this is finished." He moved in for a final strike faster than Taman could track. The blow should have ended it, should have knocked Taman unconscious and decided the match, should have decided Earth's fate, but Taman didn't fall.